Hey, Jess, do you want me to just go right ahead?
Yep, recording's on.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, at least in my part of the world, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's morning. Welcome to Art and Design in G Suite. My name is Tom Mullaney. As I told you, I'm coming to you from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, but I was part of the Colorado 16 Innovator cohort. And I do want to say something real quick. In all fairness to the town of Boulder, Colorado, it is a crime that we don't call it BOU 16 or Boulder 16. I don't know why that is. No other cohort is named for its state and not its city. So just put that out there. I'm an education consultant. In my time in education, I taught special education, and then I did social studies, and I did some ed tech coaching. And now I just work with districts on professional development. And you can find me on Twitter at Tom E. Mullaney. I spell my last name with one L, or excuse me, I spell it with two L's, unlike the comedian John Mullaney, who I'm a big fan of, who spells it with one L. So that's how you know how to spell my last name. All right. So today we're going to talk about art and design. I'm going to treat them as separate buckets. We're going to talk about drawing with G Suite, and we're going to talk about design with G Suite. Let me start with drawing. And my biggest thing about drawing with G Suite is when you think about drawing and I'm using G Suite, what tool comes right to mind, right? And the answer is Google Drawings. And guess what? You cannot freehand sketch in Google Drawings. So I'm going to show you some actual G Suite or Google tools where you can actually draw, and I'll show you some things about them, and then we'll get into design and we'll go from there. So my first thing is, remember, we're in education, right? And I want to keep this education focused. And this is a hill I will die on as far as classroom instruction. Classroom instruction should completely and totally incorporate drawing. And I don't care if it's a subject. It should not happen just in the art class. The research is overwhelming that we all learn from drawing. So I put some academic examples here, such as the water cycle or the Schlieffen plan. It's coming back. We'll refer to the Schlieffen plan again. I hope you like World War I. Slope of a line, commutative property, sheet music, parts of a novel. All these things can be drawn. And, obviously we can do them analog. And when we do them digitally, we save them to the cloud. We have a perfect undo button, which means we have a perfect erase, which I know I need quite a bit. And so that's why I always say, if you can do it digitally, do it digitally. It's a nice way to do it. Obviously, if your students have touchscreens, such as touchscreen Chromebooks or iPads, all the better. All right, so the first one I want to refer to is AutoDraw. AutoDraw is this wonderful predictive drawing, right? It requires no sign-in whatsoever, which does mean you have to download what you have. It's not going to save to the cloud, but you have to do that. And the link is in the chat. Autodraw.com, wonderful, fast drawing for everyone. And it also has a text tool in there. It's got a freehand sketch tool in there. Not the most sophisticated one, but it's there. And it has, some other tools and whatnot. But AutoDraw, very nice. I'm a big fan. The next one I want to bring your attention to is Chrome Canvas. This is one that I wish I saw more educators using. Chrome Canvas is this, it's got this weird website, and that's in the chat, canvas.apps.chrome. Why that's the URL, I have no earthly idea, but it is. And it is if you go to the help guides for Chrome Canvas, it will tell you that it's meant for Chromebooks. It will work best on Chromebooks. I have had some success with it on other devices from time to time, but it is meant for Chromebooks. Google clearly, I'm inferring here, but I think they want to have a sketching and drawing solution that they can point to for Chromebooks, and this is it, Chrome Canvas. It has a chalk tool. It has a layer tool. It has opacity and size and opacity sliders. So if you've used the Adobe drawing apps, such as Adobe Illustrator Draw or Illustrator Sketch, you can change those two things, which is really, really nice. You can draw from scratch or do it over an image. So there's a couple benefits there. So if you just want to jot down some notes, you can, or draw something real quick, you can do it in Chrome Canvas. However, you can put an image in there and then either annotate the image. So anything you can screen capture, you can annotate in this Chrome Canvas tool. Or you can use it to actually sketch. I'm in the middle of one right now where it's a picture of Patrick Ewing after the Knicks advanced to the 1994 NBA Finals, and he's doing this. And I'm starting to just do it. And I'm using pinch to zoom to get fine details like the NBA on NBC logo that you see in the image. So nice. And the great thing is once you've done it, it has layers that can be set to transparent. So now I can make that transparent, and now it's just my sketch. Really, really nice tool for drawing. Yeah, Chrome Canvas is really, really nice. It saves to your Chrome canvas, meaning if you go from device to device, you'll find it at canvas.apps.chrome. It usually takes a minute to load them all up, but that it saves there, and you can name them. It doesn't connect to Drive or Classroom. I'll say yet. I have no knowledge of that. My hope for it is that one day it does. Additionally, the layering, I read that there are 10 layers that you can do. I haven't tested that out just yet because typically I just put all my drawings on one layer, but that's what I've been led to believe so far. All right, and then lastly, Jamboard. People who follow me on Twitter and YouTube and whatnot know I'm a big Jamboard stan, big fan of it because it saves to Drive, it integrates with Classroom, so you can assign a jam, make a copy for each student. Students can edit, students can view. Thank you for sharing the web. Obviously, the mobile and web apps are different. The mobile app for your Chromebooks, especially those touchscreen Chromebooks, and your iPads, it has much more functionality, including auto draw baked right in, which is really nice. So Jamboard, you get some benefits because you can add images. You can add these sticky notes, right? So there's some benefits. Now, having said that, the sketch tools are nowhere near as sophisticated as they would be in Chrome Canvas. And I just wanted to show you some masterful drawings, and these are all World War I related. So this first one here on the left is something I did in Chrome Canvas. And by the way, I don't want to brag. I know that when you see this, you say, that's an artist. Wow. I received my artistic training at Juilliard. I know I'm doing a great job here. So I'm trying to be humble about it, but anyway, I hope you sense the sarcasm in my voice. This Chrome Canvas one, actually, this illustrates the idea that Germany invaded France by going through Belgium, and that violated Belgium's sovereignty, and their ally who had pledged to defend it was the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom was now upset, and so now the war is escalating. So I actually, believe it or not, as simple as that sketch is, I actually had to use an image and make that the base layer and then make it transparent to be able to do that. So that was basically a trace job right there. But I did those flags pretty decently. By the way, one thing I will say, when you use Chrome Canvas on a touchscreen, really, most of these, when you use a touchscreen, take your two fingers. I hope you can see that right there. Pinch to zoom in. That makes the canvas bigger. So now I can pinch to zoom in and say, write the word France, and it's not taking up the whole screen. So you always want to do that. The second one is from AutoDraw. I think it's pretty obvious. AutoDraw does not have a United States flag, but they have a blank flag. So I just kind of drew on top of it. It does have a peace sign, and it has actually a couple peace signs, as you can see right there. And so I use that. I use the text in AutoDraw. And then Jamboard is wonderful. I didn't really draw a ton on this, but I have a little bit of drawing. That's my artistic rendering of the word anarchy using the 4 brushes in Jamboard. And I put some pictures in, and I put some text, which you can do in the mobile app. You can use the handwriting recognition, or you can just use sticky notes that are set to transparent. this actually shows you the 4 brushes in Jamboard. And by the way, if you click on jamboard.google.com, it will tell you that the 3rd drawing tool is a highlighter and the 4th is the brush. Those names need to be, the 3rd one is really a calligraphy tool and the 4th one is a real highlighter. Try it for yourself. I've shared this feedback. It is not, I haven't changed it, but the one that's not labeled a highlighter, the one that's labeled a brush, is actually a true highlighter. That's which you can see in this A, or it's actually, you can see it in the C. That's like a blue highlighter right there. All right. So which one would I use with students? Okay. It really depends on what you need, what your use case is, as they say in technology. And so if you want to save to Google Drive, you'd use Jamboard. If you don't want students signing in, AutoDraw is perfect. If you don't have a touch screen, you'll want to use AutoDraw because it corrects your drawings for you, right? I would say if students are really good at drawing, right into Chrome Canvas, let them have it, right? Possible Padlet replacement, Jamboard, right? Real-time collaboration, neither AutoDraw nor Canvas are collaborative. You can't share and then invite editors. Jamboard would be the one for you. So it really depends on your need as to which one I would suggest you use. Okay. And I'm putting some more in here, and I'm happy to take any questions about drawing before I get into design. I don't think comes to design, my opinions get a little bit more controversial. So, boundaries for your health and PE classes, boundaries for your history classes and social studies classes, illustrating a vocabulary term or foreign language term, drawing a recipe, a system of the body, right? Storyboarding scenes. There's so many things your students can do with drawing in an academic context. And I highly recommend you, have at it and do that. Okay. All right. And thank you, Jess, for sharing the link so people can play if they want to go off and play. All good. Welcome. All right. Let's talk about design. So I'm putting this all in the design bucket, and I want you to think about G Suite, the G Suite tools you use. And I also want you to think about, obviously soon, not yet, I don't know when, but we're going to get some announcements about via a Virtual Innovator Academy. I don't know what that I sound is.
VIA, I guess, is how we're going for it.
Going straight up with the letters, VIA. All right, VIA 20 announcements are coming soon. And I see in the innovator communities, in the chats, thank you, in the chats and whatnot, I see in the GEG groups, I see a lot of people sharing, whether it be for PD they want to do or innovator project creations, right? Because a lot of innovator projects have a website, they have graphic materials that go with them, and a lot of them are, and you understand why, they are created in G Suite. So think about the core 4, right? So docs, drawings, sheets, slides. Think about Google Forms, sites, classroom. That's what I'm really getting at here today, is design in typical G Suite. All right. So my point to you is this, is that when you create something for an innovator project or just a website for Unit 2 for my students, don't make something that's bowling shoe ugly. Your students, especially in a remote learning or one-to-one context, their eyes are going to be on their screens for hours and hours and hours. So what they view should be attractive. And if you're selling your project to a wider audience and you want to get people involved and interested in your project, your visuals should be appealing to the eye, if that makes sense. We're going to start with fonts. I love, love, love fonts. And I think some of you, if you know what I've been saying lately, there's one font in particular that I like, and that's Lexend. So Lexend is it's not even new, but it's new to Google. It's new to Google as of the fall. Lexend is this font right here that there's different varieties of it. So when you go to fonts, Google Fonts, which is fonts.google.com, or if you just go to add a font in docs, drawing sheets, or slides, you will notice that there are 7 different varieties. I have 6 of them here. The 7th got cut off. And the way they work is that there's spacing. So we space out the letters to give more breathing room. And the whole point of Lexend is that the research the designers have done has pointed them in the direction of refining each character. And they seem to have demonstrated that reading speed is increased when using Lexend fonts over typical fonts such as Arial, right? So lately, everything I create, I'm doing in Lexend, because if there's some research or some effort or consideration to making it easier for the reader, then I'm all for that, and I want to do that. I personally use Lexend Deca. I've definitely used, like, Lexend Zeta is the most spaced out. I like to say that in Lexend Zeta, the characters are following social distancing. They're 6 pixels apart from each one. I don't know that for sure, but that gives you a lot of breathing room. When I was last in a school, I was making signs for doors, and I actually did them in Zeta to kind of let the characters really breathe, and I did them in bold and all caps. But my typical go-to, just I like it and I think it looks good, is Lexend Deca. So Lexend Deca. And by the way, as you look at Lexend Deca right here, and you see it says almost before we knew it, we had left the ground. That's there. Have a look at it. See if it rings a bell, reminds you of anything. Okay. You could even put it in the chat if you feel like it reminds you of something. We'll get there. All right. So the lowercase a in Lexend. The lowercase a I want to highlight particularly because there's a reason why teachers would use this. So I'm an elementary teacher, and I'm looking right now at our chat, and I see Melissa. It's Melissa, you joined us at 11:02, and you are from Missouri. You're a gifted coordinator. You're part of the Sweden 17 cohort. Welcome. And why am I highlighting you? Because your name ends in an A, and the A in your name in the font in Meet here doesn't look like what I hand draw, does it? It's got this little loop and then a little curve on top. And we never draw it that way. We teach students to draw it this way. So just a quick question. What font do elementary teachers, and I need to be a little bit caught up in the chat. What font? Oh, Abid, you got it. They usually use Comic Sans. Yes, yes, yes. Comic Sans is the way to illustrate that. Is the way to address this. By the way, when I talked about things that are familiar and reminiscent, and someone said railway. But they may have been answering the question about. Okay. I am telling you right now that Lexend Deca highly reminds me of the Google, the logo font. I'm telling you right now. And so what I would suggest to you is that if you are creating a slideshow or something like that, and you want to call out something that's googly or Google, I would suggest use Lexend Deca. Look, there's more spacing. This is Deca, which is the tightest Lexend gets. There's more spacing, and I think I've set that to bold as well. But it definitely is reminiscent. Now, obviously, the last E is not off at a slant, but I mean, I've brought this up to the people at Lexend. They said that apparently they've been developing Lexend since the year 2000. So technically, this Google logo iteration came out in 2015. Not the same, but you get my point. There is definitely some similarity. So if you ever want to highlight the word Google in a presentation, do it in Deca, and you should do that. Okay. All right, let's talk about imagery. Oh, by the way, real quick on Comic Sans. I want to come back to Comic Sans real quick. A lot of people do not like Comic Sans. And I personally don't either. Not a fan. And what I want you to think about is that these last few months I hope they've made everyone on this call kind of rethink a lot of the things that we just take for granted and accept as a society. And so a lot of the assumptions that we have, what are they based in, right? What kind of elitism or this group or that thing is better than another thing? What is that all based in, right? So just something to think about. I'm going to speak more about that in a little bit with design and color contrast, but I'm just going to plant that seed real quick. All right. Let's talk imagery. And let me tell you, when it comes to everything you do in Google, whether it's docs, your present slideshows, your websites, you want to have professional imagery. Okay, Tom, I don't pay for a Corbis subscription, right? I am not a professional photographer. My best camera is probably this phone. It's actually my partner Aaron's Pixel, but my phone is $275 and more than 2 years old. Anyway, professional imagery, I'm telling you, makes a huge difference whenever you create for your audience. And so where do I suggest you get it? I suggest, now you can use Wikipedia, especially if you're teaching a lesson. They have professional stuff there that you can take. But my big thing right now is Pexels.com. What is Pexels? So there are a lot of stock photo sites out there. One that I've liked in the past is Unsplash. Unsplash is great. Pexels, though, has dedicated themselves to becoming the world's first inclusive free stock photo and video library. I haven't really used the videos. What does that mean? So you look at the homepage, and I'm seeing a more inclusive representation of couples. I'm seeing not one, but two persons of color. And actually, this image, the top image, rotates. So you see more than just, people who would identify as men, all right? And it's nice because what it means is that anytime you show, you just search. You don't have to search for Black student or, gay parents. If you search for parents or you search for students, it's more inclusive along a lot of different lines, right? It's just in the search algorithm, right? So I highly recommend Pexels.com, using Pexels for that. And by the way, if I go back, so this right here, this background image I've been using this whole time, and for the sketching ones, I had a different one. I am using images from Pexels. All right, while we're at it, this is gonna be my first shout out to a fellow innovator. So Kristen, one other thing. Let me address this with Pexels. Pexels and Unsplash, when you download an image, it tells you two things. One, you do not have to cite. Okay, they say you're free to use this without attribution. And then they have a link, and you can cite us by clicking the copy right here. So I always tell people, click that copy, be a good person. In a Google Sites footer, perfect. My footers on my Google Sites are always, here's the credits. Here's the credit sequence. I got this image from here, whatever. So, and I love telling students. So when I've worked with Pexels or Unsplash with students, Unsplash is the same, where it's, you don't have to attribute, but they give you the text to do so. I always tell them, hey, you don't even have to cite them. Don't tell your teachers that. And let's cite them, because we're going to be good people and good digital citizens. And we obviously didn't take this picture ourselves, right? So I would absolutely, if students, so let me give you why would students use Pexels, right? Digital portfolio, bam. They have to do a digital portfolio. They need a banner image. We're going to talk more about banner images soon. Let's say they have a page about what they do in their community, and they work with wood. That image there would be perfect as a banner for that. This one right here in the bottom center. So just something to think about. But yes, I have used stock photo sites such as that with students. Anytime they have to create, do it. Yes. Okay. All right. Alt text. So first innovator I'm going to call out is part of the Mountain View 16 cohort. Her name is Lindsay Blass. Everything I've learned about accessibility comes from Lindsay Blass. I don't think Lindsay's on the call today, but part of Mountain View 16. Lindsay has been a great resource for me for accessibility. She taught me what I know. And what I'm telling you about accessibility is that when you add images to your Google Docs and your slides, it's a little bit different, drawings, and then it's a little bit different in Google Sheets. It's different because you can put an image on top or in a cell, and each one has a different way of doing alt text. But do your alt text, right? And same with Google Sites. You always do your alt text. It's a much more inclusive practice. That way, anyone who's using a screen reader or anyone who's using, who cannot see what you meant by the image, they get read to them a description. Try to be as explicit as possible in there. I put, you see that's something I wrote for that image. Excuse me, on that last slide. I'm gonna have a sip of water. So try to be inclusive. I know when you're up against a deadline and, and you never know when you're going to teach that student who needs that alt text and who needs that and who's using a screen reader. So definitely do that. All right, let's talk color. And again, thank you, Lindsay. You taught me a lot about what I know about color. And so first of all, you can always Google color picker. If you Google the words color picker, and again, I'm using Lexa and Deca for Google, you see, I'm telling you, it looks like the Google logo. You get a built-in color picker. This also works for solitaire. My wife and I battle in solitaire, and I shame her for not using the advanced or the harder version. But anyway, you get this color picker, and you have a slider, and you can just pop it once you get to where you are, and you get what's called this hex code. And just real quick, a hex code is when you use color on the web. Well, yes, color picker, the British version, also works. Nice. When you use colors on the web, they use this 6-character hex color. It's alphanumeric, and I'll talk a little bit about the bases of the system, but that tells you the color. And so if you want to choose a color, like I want a fire engine red or something like that, that's how you would do it, right? You can also, and this is a little animated GIF I made, you can also use ColorZilla. There's other ones. I use ColorZilla. You can use other Chrome extensions to grab a color. So you grab the color here. I'm grabbing one of the shades of orange of Gritty, by the way. So I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I lived most of my adult life in Philadelphia, and I love Gritty. I'm obsessed with Gritty. And so that's me using ColorZilla to grab one of the oranges in Gritty. So that's, I'm using a Wikipedia image. I'm using, something on a website, and I want the image and the color of the website to match. That's what you use there, right? It's a nice way to do things with themes and, so that your elements match up. Now, having said that, I'm going to ask you real quick, which of these is the most pleasant to look at? Choice 1, choice 2, or choice 3? You didn't think that you'd be, sitting for your eye exam today. I think we're going to get you some nice Warby Parker specs. It's pretty obvious, right? It's choice 3, right? And so my question to you is, why is choice 3 so much better than choice 1 and choice 2? And what it has to do with is color contrast. You want to have a good amount of contrast. Thank you. Yes, Mariah. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm going a little quick. So the difference between your text color and your background color is so vital. It's really, really important that you have a nice difference between those two components. Now, the WebAIM color contrast checker is a great site to check what you have. So you can use ColorZilla or the Google color picker, pop it in there, and see what your backgrounds look like. And there's also sliders. See that slider? You can make it lighter and darker, and it's actually going to tell you if it's passing the different tests and or your color contrast ratio. And actually, if you like a pair of colors and you can document that they work or maybe they don't work and you want to share that with the collaborator, you click this permalink and it sends that off to the, it's a link that goes right there, not to just their basic thing, which is really nice. Now, oh, sorry, I actually clicked on, there it is here. I can just demo that real quick. If I make this lighter, it's going to start failing. And I can fix that one of two ways. I can make that either much darker, or I can make this, the background, Oh, it's still not good. So I would need to make that lighter to make it pass. You see that? And then that permalink is now I have a copy paste and I can do that. So I didn't mean to do that, but I actually did. Okay, that actually was good. All right. All right. And so what I want to show you here when we talk about design and color aesthetics is the Brooklyn Nets. So I'm actually a Knicks fan, so it's kind of funny that I'm showing you this, but this is the Brooklyn Nets, and I want you to just pay attention to their aesthetic, right? What do you notice? What colors are they using, right? They are doing it in a way that makes it so there are two colors, and the contrast could not be better, right? Black and white, right? It's such a contrast. And this Brooklyn here, which is relatively small from that far away, I can really see it. This Brooklyn here, very, very prominent. This Brooklyn Nets here on the side of the backboard, perfect. John Neal joined. Perfect timing, John. We're talking about basketball. And so I love their aesthetic. And for a long time, if I had any question about, all right, I'm going to design something, is it going to be, what are my two colors going to be? I would default to black and white because here should be on the next one. Oh, sorry. Because now I'll show it to you here on the on Colorzilla real quick. Oh, sorry, I skipped a slide. I knew I had it in here. The black and white color contrast ratio is 21:1. And this is where your hex colors, the darkest you can get with hex codes is all zeros. Oh, no. I'm a Knicks fan. Orange and blue, even though they're terrible and will forever be terrible. Lightest is actually, you would think maybe 9999. No, it's FFFFF is all the way white. And that's a 21:1 ratio. That's the highest ratio you can get. And so I would say as a designer thinking about creating products for students and thinking about students seeing them and then all the text popping and whatnot, I would always default to black and white. And then you remember what happened. We had the awful incidents in Central Park and Minneapolis that were not unique and, that are just all too commonplace in our country. And so every corporation that had a brand that wanted to issue a somewhat anodyne statement, and everyone who had to issue an apology went and found a white designer to do the exact same thing, which is this. Basically, black and white, Black Lives Matter, or I've failed, I've done an apology. Now, this is where I'm going to highlight another innovator. Her name is Susanna Summers. I'm not even sure which cohort she's part of, but she pointed me to a website called Dribble, which is with 3 B's. It's not a basketball reference, I promise. And they have this wonderful podcast, LAX 18, way to go. Hey, at least, in Colorado, we're named for a state, not an airport. Okay. So she pointed me to this website called Dribble with 3 B's. And they have this wonderful podcast called Overtime, hosted by Meg Lewis. And she is the one who she shared that in the design field. I'm talking about graphic designers. 97% of them are white. So every company that said, oh, we need to issue an apology tweet, or we need to do a very anodyne, we support positive things, they went and did this. And so 97% of white, of the field is white, they produce this. They don't, if the field was more diverse and they had designers of color, they might have seen other, they might have had other things. Oh, okay. Yes, Karen, I understand. My brother lives in Woodland Hills. My twin brother actually lives in Woodland Hills. Yes. We're going to have Randy Newman play I Love LA in a little bit. And so I'm so grateful to Susanna for showing me Dribble and the Dribble Overtime podcast, because that got me thinking about, okay, when we make design choices, including that Comic Sans choice, right? We all agree, oh, Comic Sans is terrible. But why do we all agree that Comic Sans is terrible? Why do we think it's awful, right? What kind of assumptions are there? So anytime we do design, whether it's inclusive stock photography, whether it's clip art. And but I know we're doing Google today, right? So we're not talking about clip art, but clip art is not inclusive at all. For those of you who love Microsoft, not one of those. Anyway, so you want to be very, very careful. I'm not saying don't use black and white, but it's something to think about when you are, now that black and white has been kind of the default of these companies doing this, you may want to change it up a little bit for the time being. I think if more graphic designers were of color, then you'd probably see people's faces. Meg shared this in the Dribble podcast. You'd probably see people's faces, hey, I'm sorry, rather than just this black and white, I've failed and I've been called out. Okay. All right. Now that was some overview. Let's get into the actual G Suite. Let's get into the actual apps. So one, Google Classroom. I'm going to start there. Yeah, I have some design thoughts about Google Classroom. First and foremost, I'm going to say it, the stock, which they're more like illustrations, classroom headers, they're fine. They're totally fine. But I would suggest using Pexels and Wikipedia. Use what your class is learning about right now. So here, U.S. history, I got Harriet Tubman. This year is Malcolm X and some colleagues for US 2. For current events, I got AOC. These are all three of these are from Wikipedia. This geography one, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a person of color looking at a globe. It gives you more of a hook. It gives the students more of a hook of what we're doing rather than a random kind of image. I highly recommend going with this. Now, in Classroom, we all know, I'm sure, I see Holly Zakos on the chat. Holly, if you can type in the chat, sorry to call you out, but if you can type in the chat, what's the issue with Classroom banners, especially in the main page? There is definitely a big design issue with Classroom banners in the home screen of Classroom. I'll give you a second to type in that, but there's definitely an issue and we will get to it. Oh, well, Abid beat you to it. Why is it dark? Yes, there's a dark overlay. All I can say to you is the question mark at the very bottom, put in, Abid's fingers are very fast. Use that question mark and enter that feedback that we don't want the dark overlay over these. It's very, very dark, and it is to contrast the check. That's the text. That's very true. But maybe the text color could change, right? No, I get, and I understand that. Yes. Okay, Holly, I'm sorry I called you out. It's just that we're in a community together, the PE product experts who we talk about. This comes up a lot. Fair enough. All right. So that's Classroom banners. The next thing I'm going to suggest is please remove your classwork from the stream. So this is in your general settings for a classroom. I used to do show attachments and details because I like that quick access to any kind of things you've put in the assignment. But if we hide the notifications, then all the stream is class announcements, and all the classwork tab is assignments, resources, and work. And now why would we do that? Because in the classwork tab, we have topics. The stream has no topics. It has no organization. Right? Yes, Karen pointed out that Sites does the same thing. It darkens the banner image. I will share some thoughts on that shortly. Stick a pin in that. So what I'm telling you is that make the stream the place for your announcements. Hey, today we are meeting in this room because our normal room is being used for something else. In the classwork tab, that's where your work and your resources live, right? Now, once you do that, once you're in the classwork tab, anybody else notice that the classroom tab is just text and white pixels? It really is, without emojis, it's a really hard place to look and say, all right, I know what I'm expected to do. You really have to dig into it. There's no visual hook or cue in that classroom tab. And so that's why I suggest using emojis. Best practices for this, try to keep it to 1 or 2. and have a space between. I saw a great one the other day on Twitter, but there was no space between the actual emoji and the text. That gives it a little bit of a hook. If I'm teaching European history and we're in the French Rev unit, I put that French Revolution flag there. Bam, it's obviously French Revolution when we go back and look at it later, right? Just that little emoji, another trick that Lindsay Blast taught me. That little emoji, bam, that gives it that visual hook. And again, you keep your classroom stream or your stream nice and empty and as little as we can do. Okay, Google Forms. Yes, Emojipedia. That's the one I use. I use Emojipedia. All right. So, Google Forms, I'm going to ask you, in Google Forms, it is so easy to add images. And so I'm going to ask you all to please use images in your Google Forms. So here's what 2 questions can look like when it's just text. And this is what they can look like when you just insert the image. And remember, for any question or any answer choice, you can go and click on click on the image icon and you can add, it does a free to reuse search. Bam, you can do that and it works out nicely. Really, really nice. I highly recommend you do it because you want to give your kids visual cues and visual hooks. If a kid answers this, maybe they've memorized the answer, but they don't see the tennis court oath. You want to give them multiple modalities, ways to process this information and make connections and association. And honestly, both of these 2 questions, if I use these as I have it as a 2-question entrance or exit ticket, I can reuse these on the test. I don't think any of these give away the answer. So I'll reuse it on the test, make your test more visually appealing, right? What do you prefer to read? Things with images that give you cues and break up the text, or just text after text after text, right? All right, let's talk drawings and slides, and then I'll get more specific. So this drawings and slides are kind of similar, aren't they? So yes, you can use gradients. You absolutely can use gradients. I use them in this session. I think gradients for little elements and design flair, all good. I suggest my little pro tip for that is that when you use a gradient, and I didn't do it here, I should have for this one, use transparent as one of the color stops. I did that on the first slide of this presentation. Transparent as the first or last stop in a gradient is really, really nice because it really just goes away. It's a really, really nice trick. So that's what I would suggest there when you do gradients, include a transparent color stop. All right, drop shadow. It gives elements dimension. And you hear I put drop shadow on this text, under format options. By the way, I love just under, changing the opacity of images. Like this image in the background here, I've made much more transparent than it actually is. It's a really good thing. One thing I'm going to say, though, is you want to avoid, if you're making a logo or an icon, think about your innovator project, right? You have a little logo or icon for it. Maybe you're making it in Google Drawings. Avoid your drop shadows. Why is that? Do I not have it? Okay, that's fine. Oh, maybe I have it. Nope. Okay. I'll actually speak to it now. We live in a day and age right now where all logos and icons don't have dimension, right? They are flat. And that really started in about 2013 when Apple did an iPhone update and they made them, instead of buttons, they made them flat. And so it's just a standard right now. You wouldn't have an icon with dimension. It's just what we do. I will say Instagram, they had a very 3D, it was like the camera, and they used a drop shadow in the middle to give the lens some dimension. Now they have a flat one. They have a gradient. Not a lot of gradients in logos. Instagram is one of the very few logos that I've seen where there's actually a gradient. So that's something a little different. All right, let's talk about Google Drawings. And the first one is transparent back. Now you can do transparent backgrounds and slides, but we know that in drawings it defaults. All right. We set it to 512 by 512 for our logos, our favicons, for our websites, our podcast logos are 512 by 512. That's a standard square. You can download it as an SVG if you want it for a logo. One thing about SVGs is while they do scale very well, you can't insert an SVG into docs and slides and all that stuff. But again, you avoid your gradients and drop shadows. Again, gradients is a little not as bad, but you get my point. All right, and I'm going to say it. No, and I know this also lives in slides, but I rarely see people use this in slides. But in Google Drawings, I've seen so many people say, "Oh, we got word art." Sorry, Google. Nope. I'm gonna say, please don't do it. Just hold off. Just word art is kind of, so like a decade ago. Yeah, but yeah. All right, let's talk Google Slides. So a couple things, obviously, just to call it out real quick. Let somebody else worry about it. Can't someone else do it? Yep. Slides Carnival, Slides Mania, they are two of my favorite. But if you don't want to start from scratch, just use them. Here's a couple suggestions. And one of them is definitely play with page setup in the file menu. And I'll give you an example of that. So you're at work, you're broadcasting to the world, and you see black bars. Why is that? Maybe because the screen you use to create it is not the screen. Is not the screen that you would use. It's not the screen that you use to present it. So you want to make sure that the aspect ratio is right. So if your screen is 16 by 10 and slides typically defaults to 16 by 9, you have to adjust that. So file page setup, you want to make sure that whatever you present it on, you don't have the black bars, right? That's why 3 by 2 screens are a little bit tricky, because slides doesn't default to 3 by 2. You can change it to 3 by 2. The other thing I'm going to say, and I see so many people share their slideshows, is that in your slideshow, every slide, please, and I think you got it here. I'm going to check how many slides I have left. Oh, I have a handful. Okay, we got a little. We'll try to keep it to an hour. Give every slide a heading or a title, so that when we do this here, we don't see blanks, because blanks don't tell me what I can expect to see there. I don't want to see a blank. A blank is confusing. I don't know what's supposed to be there. You're getting a little preview of the rest of my session here, but always, and it can be off to the side. It can be, you don't need, but you want to have it so that you have that out there. So Dr. Jackson, I don't know if there's a list per se. I do include it in some of my blog posts on that. I think, so honestly, I did a session where I had to just measure. I was presenting on an external screen. I had to measure the ratio, and I figured, oh, this is a 16 by 10 screen. I need to go change it, right? So you just kind of measure and see what happens. The default in slides is 16 by 9, and a lot of screens are 16 by 9. So know that. The one I'm presenting on right now is 16 by 9. All right. The other thing is, use the master slide. The master slide is wonderful for, you can make a change in one place. It's under slide and then edit master. Some terminology Google might want to think about changing. But right now that's what it's called. It's a great way to change your design and change the fonts. So in Google Docs, I just have you can set your heading in normal text. You can't really do that in slides, or at least I don't know how to do that in slides. So typically when I open up a new slideshow, if it's from scratch, I go into my master slide, I change it from Arial, which is the default, over to Lexend and go from there. And I typically, as you can tell, I like to have them pretty much the same size for my bullet points, but yeah. All right. And that should say something else. I got to change that. I don't know how that. All right. That should say edit the master. All right. Let's talk about Google Sites. This is one of my favorites. Oh, I love Google Sites. And what I said at the beginning, we don't want it bowling shoe ugly. We want to have beautiful Google Sites. And so first and foremost, I can't tell you how many times I see this. And I see this from first grade teacher just using Google Sites up until the most innovator, right? Put a favicon, Because if you don't have a favicon, you get that Google Sites logo that tells me nothing about your website. It tells me nothing about what you're doing, gives you no identity. So please put in that favicon. The logo to me is more optional. You don't really need, you could use it, but it's more optional. But that favicon, which, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, right here, I know I'm in Google Slides because of that favicon right there. So I suggest using Google Drawings for that purpose, but you can use different things. Google Drawings, make it flat, no drop shadows, try to avoid gradients, and leave it a transparent. Works great, chef's kiss. All right. I wanted to point out here this is an image. This is a website. It's not Google, but I wanted to show you this. This is, this is an education. This is a real world website, Eater New York. And this is actually someone who was a year behind me at college who had a great piece about, I'm a restaurant critic. I'm not eating out right now. I'll get takeout. My point about this is I think this is really nice design. They've definitely done an adjustment for the banner, a readability adjustment. My suggestion to you on that is that either you do the readability adjustment and you put your title in the middle here, like they did on Eater, or you leave it, get rid of the readability adjustment and then put the title just below it in a nice big conspicuous way. My point to you here is that large banners are in right now. Right now, if you have a nice big large banner in Google Sites, that's totally good. That might change over time, but right now large banners are in. And I wanted to show you just kind of like an outside of education, outside of Google, that they totally are in right now. And so you could replicate this in Google Sites, right? Professional image from Pexels or Wikipedia. Put a little text, use the readability adjustment, and bam, you have it right there. There, showing you that readability adjustment right there. That's right. That's how you do it. When we do header type, you can go big. I'm Tom. I've told you that word art is passe. I'm telling you, big headers are not. You have my worthless permission to use them. All right. Buttons. I really like buttons in Google Sites. And what I'm going to say to you about buttons is this. If you're using Google Sites and you're using buttons, this is the time. You know how Chromebooks are great because they have no caps lock key, so kids can't just all caps? You tell your students if they're making a website, this is when you can use all caps. When you're making a button, I want all caps. That's why I have the word buttons in all caps. Buttons that are in regular uppercase, lowercase, don't pop. They don't look the same. If you're doing buttons, this is my Digital Breakouts website. I want them in all caps, please. Image carousels. Image carousels are totally in right now. Definitely, I would suggest, honestly, if they're just images and nothing else, use image carousels, not Google Slides for this purpose, because a lot of people love to embed their Google Slides, and go ahead and do that. But let's use image carousels for the imagery. If we have a lot of images to get through, please do that. Definitely prefer that. And by the way, with image carousels, you can use alt text. They've built that in, which is really nice. One other point about image carousels is that they definitely work better in landscape shaped images. In, portrait shaped images, not as much. So just something to think about. All right, collapsible text. I really like collapsible text. I'm a fan of it. Definitely, I highly recommend using it. It's just a nice way to get fewer and fewer elements on a website. That's one other thing. If you're making a website or making a Google Doc or a slideshow, the fewer elements per page. If your readers have to scroll all the way down forever and ever, that is really tough, and it's really not pleasant for them. So make it another page, do something so that they don't have to scroll and see 5 different, if I have 6 different slideshows on my website, on my one page, most people are just they're gonna glaze over and they don't want to interact with it. All right, this is a new thing. I made a video about this like last week or the week before. Placeholders. I have not seen a lot of conversation about this on social media. Placeholders in Google Sites are awesome. Use them, because what it does is it basically tells your collaborator, a Google Doc is going to go here, a YouTube video is going to go here, a map is going to go here. Check this out. This placeholder is amazing, because once you set it, then when the person clicks the middle button, it'll have like the YouTube logo and it'll go right to YouTube search. You can put a little note to them. Hey, put your YouTube video here and then delete this text. Oh my goodness, please, with the placeholders, great for collaboration. All right, so I'll end there, about 5 minutes to go. So the bit.ly to this is bit.ly/G Suite-art. That's where I have my blog posts. I got to put my blog posts about doing my resume and Google Slides. Yes, do your resume and Google Slides. But we also have a bit.ly for the presentation right there. Thank you so much, Jess, for doing that. So yes, please connect with me. And then just a couple of appreciations. Lindsay, Susanna, very wise people. And the Dribble website is just nice for design ideas. You create a little sign in there. But I really, really, really like the Overtime podcast. Every week, Meg Lewis is relatively quick and some great ideas about design. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm happy to take any questions. Appreciate your taking the time to listen and collaborate together.
Oh, thank you, Tom. That was really great. And if you did come in, I know some people came in during the session, definitely watch back or take a look through his slides because there's so many great resources for accessibility and diversity and just general awareness as a teacher in all of the G Suite tools. So thank you. Awesome job.
Thank you. Thank you, Jess. We have a question from Valerie about Google Sheets. Oh, yeah. And so what I would say about Google Sheets is I want you to think about Google Sheets with keep in mind some of the concepts I taught about color. So when you have your black text and you want to have a fill color, I did this morning where I wanted to separate the groups. Don't use that burnt red, maroon as the backdrop, right? You want to have those light colors with the black text. Borders are great with that, right? This might be a little sacrilegious, but I'm not the biggest Google Sheets fan. I know, you can't say that. But that's why, I want to just kind of speak to some of the things that move me. But I think if you take the precepts or the concepts about, especially color, do that with Sheets.